Thank you for attending this session. I'm Frederick Earl, and I'm your chair for this afternoon. I'm delighted to welcome the VP of Product from Calendly, OG Udezue. OG is an innovation focused on multidiscipline product executive with a proven record for building customer-centric products and bringing them to market while managing and monitoring high-performance teams. So we're going to play a recording of his talk, running high-impact experiments with high-quality customer discovery. So if you have any question during the talk, just type them in the Q&A box at the right of your screen. And at the end of the presentation, OG will try to answer as many questions as he can before the time is up for the session. So thank you very much. So we can play now.
Hey, ALI 2020 virtual conference attendees. My name is Udezue, and I'm speaking to you from beautiful Austin, Texas. I think we have a really interesting topic to talk about today. So let's get into it. All right, ALI 2020 attendees, let's get started. Today I want to talk to you about how to run high impact experiments and pairing that with quality customer discovery. I believe that this is the key to sharpen your experimentation and get you better results when you do need to use experimentation to build better products. First, a little bit about me. I am a product management leader. I'm ex-Microsoft, ex-Bridgewater Associates, ex-Atlassian, ex-Calendly. I've been an entrepreneur, which means that I've had to create something from scratch and really try to find customer fit with customers, which has shaped a lot of my thinking about experimentation. And I work a lot with early stage startups who also have to do exactly the same thing. They have to find a repeatable business model. And often the way we do that is through really great experimentation. The first thing I want to start with is to put experimentation in context of building amazing products, because I think that that is the end state. That's where we want to get to. Experimentation doesn't live by itself. So the way I think about it is that experimentation helps to deal with uncertainty. When you're building great products, there are lots of things that are uncertain, or lots of stages that are uncertain. And the way to deal with this wayfinding, right, to get to certainty so you can build the right thing, is via some experimentation. Now, let's go a little deeper, because generally I find that there are two kinds of teams, broad teams that are formed by people in industry. There are teams for growth, which is really about reducing friction and sanding down how people can very quickly find value from your product. And then there's the main product or the core product and how it delivers value. This is where people spend 90% of their time with your product, and you constantly build features to enhance their experience. And there's some experimentation that you need to do that correctly as well. So for these two kinds of teams, and there might be different names for them, whether it's growth or value innovation or core teams, whatever have you, the thing to know about them is that the uncertainty comes at different times. So let's take growth teams, for example. Growth teams have a lot of uncertainty upfront. They're trying to reduce friction. So what they do is they set targets, and then they try to figure out how to move that target, the reality of the world towards that target. And to do that, and to deal with that uncertainty, they have to craft high value customer experiments. And then they build and deploy those experiments, and then hopefully they get a good result. Now, how do value innovations team do that? Well, first they'll do a lot of customer discovery, right, about the core needs of the customer. They do design the solution based on the problems that they find. And while they are actually creating and crafting the pixels, they create uncertainty. There's 7 ways to design a particular thing. There are 10 ways to do an interaction. And the only way to find reality there is to craft an experiment that gives you certainty that one particular way is going to win over the others. And when you do that, then you can build a product with a lot more confidence. So this is at the point where I sort of talk to you guys about how you do product experimentation. Where do you invest in? What have you learned? What are the kinds of things that anchor your product experimentation? Since you're not here with me and you're going to talk to me in the Q&A, I'm just going to talk about a few things that stand out to me from years and years of doing some experimentation. The first one is you have to have the right tools. So pay attention to the makeup of your tools. You know, some people will use open source tools like Split or Optimizely. Some people will use statistical significance calculators. Whatever it is, make sure that your tool set is solid. There's nothing worse than having to question the results of your experiment because tools aren't there. The second thing I would say is controls. You have to have holdouts. So whenever you do an experiment, you have to have part of the population that's exposed to nothing so you can do a real comparison. I remember when I was at Atlassian, and this was a huge hobby horse of one of my CEOs. And it took some time for some of the teams to really learn how to make sure they had a holdout. Because sometimes we built things, and because there's no holdout, there were no clear winners, and it was just problematic to have experiments that actually meant something. So make sure you have a holdout. At Countley, we held out maybe like 5% of the population almost permanently, and they never got any experiments whatsoever. And it was very easy to compare changes to that holdout. It's even more complicated than that, but make sure that you understand how to do holdouts. The next one is statistical significance. Now, you can't play around with this. Sometimes when you have a huge population, your changing conversion rates can be small. And it's no good. You can't actually deploy into production things that have, statistical changes within the realm of, error, if that makes sense. So whatever tools you use, make sure that they can sort of record statistical significance in a way that gives everyone confidence. You know, experiments are about your team and deploying the right thing, but in many cases they have to be defended. So make sure you have that. The last thing I want to talk about, which people don't talk about a lot in experimentation, is long-term degradation. I've never met an experiment, even mightily successful, that didn't see some kind of long-term degradation. Part of the reason that this happens is because when you do an experiment, you're just capturing users in time, right? A particular cohort of users. Now, you can repeat the experiment every 6 months, but very few people do that. And especially if your customer base is changing, if you're attracting more people, different kinds of people into your product, you should expect some long-term degradation. This is why it's even more important to have good statistical significance tools. And this is also why experiments that are run need to be rerun, maybe later, in order to capture a different cohort so you can understand them and even use that to make better decisions. So these are some things to keep in mind as you think about crafting really high priority experiments. Now, for the rest of the slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about the context and the trade-off of experimentation, but also how to deal with some of the implications of these things that we've talked about. So the first one is, we said already previously that experimentation is about dealing with uncertainty. Okay, we understand that. You understand that. Now, we want to use experiments to give us more confidence in about the things we build. But experiments aren't really free for a product manager or for an R&D team. Experimentation, by necessity, increases your time to market. Imagine you were telepathic and you knew exactly what your customers wanted, you knew all their problems, and it would take you 2 weeks to get the product into the hands of customers. If you didn't know, though, and you had to do an experiment, well, your experiment might take, another 2 weeks. So you end up with, a 4-week time frame to get this in the hands of customers. So experimentation costs us something in order to increase our confidence. And that's the point, though. Product isn't a random walk, We do want that high confidence because we're facing competitors. We need to satisfy customers. We need to have high NPS. And all of those things are why we take the delay so that we can increase our confidence. Now, if you do the experiments correctly, which is the whole point of this, then that confidence will increase and you'll be able to do better product. Now, a lot of people talk about experiments without talking about a frame of reference. There are all kinds of things that affect the success of your experiment. Your team size, how many customers you have, are you early stage or you're scaled? The way Facebook does experiments is very different from the way startups should do experiments. The kind of scale that you have, how many people can you let into the experiment? So experiments aren't cookie cutter, right? We need to sort of stop speaking about experiments generally and give people better tools to customize to themselves. So let's talk a little bit about some of that and the implications of that. And with that, I want to talk a little bit about some principles that I've picked up just on experimentation before we go into customer discovery. One of my inspirations for running growth teams is Andy Johns, who's ex-Facebook and ex-Quora. And one of the things I've learned from him is to really think about how to do that customization really well, which I will go through in the next few minutes. So here are some good principles to help guide you through great experimentation, and then we'll add customer discovery to it at the end of this presentation. The first one is focus. Try to optimize one metric at a time. This is really, really important. And there are many reasons for it, but the most obvious is that if you try to optimize multiple things at once, how do you know how it's interacting with customers? How do you know that that middle level experiment is not being affected by the top of the funnel experiment and so on and so forth? Also, the fact that you have long-term degradation, right? And you have to do with statistical significance means focus on one thing at a time. Now, this is not just a product principle. It's also a human thing. Everything that you need to actually do that's hard requires focus. And if you can communicate to your leadership team that you need some time to move this metric, you're going to get a lot more space instead of when you overpromise. So here's some things to think about. Give each goal some time, right? I think about it in terms of 6 to 8 week sprints. There are times in my career that I've promised to try to move something within 2 weeks or 4 weeks. And invariably, it's always been problematic. You can do it necessarily, but I've never seen really big changes done in just 2 weeks. So it's hard to move the needle really properly. So you need time to sort of take multiple swings at a problem to get to the right one. So the next thing to think about is priority order. Imagine that you have potential, let's say you're a growth team and you have 20 things that you want to do. Don't do those 20 things in scatter order. Do them in terms of priority order. Set up your goals and metrics and rank their impact, right? And one of the things that I use, two things that I use is I prioritize impact and confidence. Do I expect to make a 10% change? If I do, how confident am I that I will make that change? And when I use those two things, it helps me rank and how I will do experiments. Where do I attack first? Top of the funnel, middle of the funnel. But really by impact and confidence, I can focus one at a time in a disciplined way. The third principle I talk about is, think in terms of scale and time, right? Smaller sample sizes mean more time to get to any kind of significance. Let's just say you are part of your startup where, maybe 50 people sign up a day or even less. Well, if you want to do an experiment that gets the statistical significance for that group of people trickling in, you have to have more time. And so it goes back to what we said previously about time to market. If you have smaller sample sizes, then you need more time. But paradoxically, if you want to make bigger changes, right? If you want to make bigger changes to the small sample size, that is how to solve the time problem. So don't try to make a 2% change on a small sample size. Try to make a 20% change. Try to make a 50% change. So that means that you have to design even more fundamental experiments and have even bigger ambitions. So anyway, the point is, you know, small sample sizes imply more time, so plan accordingly. The next one is sort of related to this, which is that, you know, large changes, large opportunities get you to faster certainty. So if you're small, aim for large changes. Don't take trickles, don't take tinkering. Aim for large changes. Aim for things that will make a huge impact on your customer base. That means, for example, that growth teams in startup companies should not think of themselves like growth teams in really big companies. In many ways, you are just an extension of the product team. So, you know, build large pieces, which might take some time. But regardless, you know, large changing opportunities means faster certainty. So don't tinker at all. Take big swings. And I think the last principle is, always, what people who do growth teams want to do, or people who do a lot of experiments, is they tackle the top of the funnel. They think that, oh, there's a lot of people at the top of the funnel. But paradoxically, it's very hard to change behavior at the top of the funnel than in the middle of the funnel. The way I think about this is, the core product is the mousetrap. So I build that first as much as I can, and then I reduce the friction and go up the funnel. So if you work on things at the bottom of the funnel, you have a chance to actually change the conversion rate in those places by big chunks, right? So a higher base conversion rate will get you faster results, right? And you can do that in the middle of the funnel more than at the top of the funnel. So some things to think about. So now let's talk a little bit about customer discovery, which is about what we're here to talk about. So let's frame this. Hypothetically, if you had perfect telepathy, you could read the minds of your customers sufficiently, you know exactly how to craft. In fact, you don't actually need experiments, right? You can just work back from the problems that they face and build perfect products. But we don't live in that world. And frankly, even if you could do that a little bit, you could devise very confident and focused experiments. Some people, think about it in terms of, Steve Jobs. Famously, he was an oracle. He knew exactly what users wanted, or he literally forced people into how he thought they should behave. But I really want to challenge that. In the last 6 months, Apple has released 6 or 7 betas for iOS 14, right? And each time they get a lot of feedback from it. So I will challenge this idea that we know what customers want. Challenge it completely. In fact, customer discovery, experimentation without customer discovery is super wasteful. We have to find ways to get into the minds of customer and sort of understand how they behave before we can devise experiments that give us certainty on what to build. So, I want to dispel this myth, for example, that, people at Apple or other places, have an advantage over us. They don't. We all have to do the same thing if we want to build great products. Think about, for example, some of the failures of Apple. Think about Maps. Think about some of their services like iCloud. These are places where, because they didn't have as much natural intuition, they didn't know what customers wanted. They wasted a lot of money, sometimes billions of dollars, right? I suspect that in those places, they didn't do enough customer discovery for them to devise a product that was really compelling. So if you step all the way back, there's a logic to how we build products, right? First of all is the why. Why does this matter to people? Why is this a problem they need to solve? And then there's you designing that thing and building it. And then there's the how you do it, right? How you build it. So each of these stages has a tool for it. I would argue that the way you solve whys is customer discovery, right? When you can sort of spend time in customers' minds, talking to them, sending them a survey, getting a sense of how their day went and their aspirations. Honestly, when you get to design and you need to solve and you need to start designing a better solution, that's where you can apply that knowledge to design even better experiments, even better what it is. And then you can build confidently. So I'll back this up with a real-time example. Hopefully this sort of drives it home. When I was building Intermingle, my startup, I sort of knew what I was trying to solve. I was trying to build an interest-based social network. That's what it really amounts to. Now, I used it at events. It was used by event organizers and a few other places, but that's what it was for. Now, I was very, very committed to experimentation. I really was. But I had some, preconceptions that I didn't challenge, even though it wasn't obvious to me at the time. I wanted to build a really modern application. I wanted to use all the things I've learned about building slick, continuously scrolling UIs to deliver this value to customers. Now, given that assumption, I designed and tested all kinds of great UI and how usable they were, right, to build Intermingle, to build a Mingle application. Only to find, when I first revealed it to customers, that I had made some mistakes. And what was my mistake? Those modern applications, those really slick applications, were things that I, as a digital native, understood. It was things like people who adopted Airbnb or who adopted Uber understood. But my target market, the people I've been talking to, and some of them may be early digital natives, they were so not, by and large, digital natives. They wanted an app that looked stodgy, just like LinkedIn, just like Facebook. And by not spending enough time talking to them, I was devising experiments that was all about usability and not about the soul and the intent of the application. And so it took me 6 months to go rewrite and rewire a very capable, but frankly, more boring application, because that's what my customers wanted. The biggest things they were dealing with were forgetting their LinkedIn password. And so all the whiz-bang UI, which they weren't used to in Facebook, they weren't used to in LinkedIn, became an impediment for them to use the product. So that's sort of one example that tells you that you have to plumb the why of the customer. You have to spend time doing customer discovery. You could be devising experiments that are going to whiff and miss completely the point of your customer if you don't spend time doing customer discovery. Now, let's talk a little bit about what that customer discovery looks like. But before we do, I want to step back and say, listen, all I'm telling you is that you are already doing experiments today. You're already devising your experiments, and you're already getting the tools, using the tools to figure out if they're working or not, and sort of building on top of that. And then you're building really great, confident products. I'm saying that sometimes product managers are missing a pre-part of that. And the pre-part of that is talk to customers. Talk to a lot of customers before you devise your experiment. So you make sure you're devising the right experiments. Now, I want to go through this quickly because I don't know how much more time we have. But over time, I've condensed customer discovery into these 6 things, and I'll talk about them one by one. So one is the aspiration interview. And really, aspiration interviews are about more general conversation with your customers, trying to really fill out what they want. What's the zeitgeist? This is the kind of thing, for example, that I've used at Intermingle, and I didn't use it at the time because I didn't have that tool, is what did my customers want to do at events, right? What was it like? Did they even want to hold up an application? Would they even do it? And so this sort of bounds an understanding of the zeitgeist of your customers. So spend some time doing that. It's really important because I think it'll help you down the line as you sort of narrowing with some of these other techniques I'm about to talk about. The second one is workflow discovery. There are usually 3 workflows you should care about and you should try to find out from talking to your customers. One is the target workflow, the one that you want to change. Really understand it. How does the customer do it? Why do they do it? Who's their boss? How long does it take? And then when you're satisfied about the issues with the workflow that you are targeting, if you have time, ask about the workflow that feeds into. What happens next? You might never build anything about this in 10 years, but it's important to know the connectivity about what happens next. And then sometimes you want to talk about the workflow that precedes the one you're interested in. If you do those 3 things, you're going to have a wealth of understanding that will help you with even better experiments, because some of the times these things are connected. The next technique is concept testing, right? This is when you're closer to wireframes, closer to design, like you understand the problem. And then you just put out the concept, the soul of what you want to do in front of your customer, and hear them react and see if it still works, and see if everything that's come before that still kind of makes sense. The next one is live watching. Most of you are aware of this, but when you're even closer to bits and you have prototypes, you put it in front of your customer so that they can react to it. And by reacting, you get a huge amount of data that feeds into product and feeds into experimentation. The last 2 things I want to talk about are really important. Talk to your unactivated customers. Imagine, for example, that 100 people come to demand your product, say through your website or through your sales channel, and 50 don't stick. We tend to talk to the people who stick around, and that's great. We need to know what they want next. We need to know what obstacles they overcame. We need to know all kinds of different things to build better products. But one thing you should do, and this is hard to do, is to talk to the 50 that didn't make it. The 50 that rejected your product, that thought it wasn't fit for them. Did they do that because of something you did? Or did they do that because of selection, because it didn't apply to them, they were mistaken? So what I've found through my career is that 1 in 100 of these customers will talk to you. But when they do, it's worth its weight in gold, right? There are some customers who came through despite all the frictions. But it's important to talk to people who didn't make it all the way through to see if there's something you could do. And based on that, you will devise even better experiments. And the last one I've already talked about is successful customers. Successful customers sometimes come in inadvertently. They come in regardless of what all the obstacles you put in front of them. And we need to understand them, spend time with them. One thing that I try to do with product teams is to say that every PM should spend 10 to 20% of their time talking to customers. And the reason I do that is that we're so busy. We're so busy building stuff, speccing things, having meetings, that if we allow it, our time with customers gets down to 1% or none at all. At Microsoft, fortunately, I had very little time to talk to customers on Windows in real life. And I think that was a disservice. My ability to inhabit their mind space. I only started actually being able to be a great PM, like outstanding PM, when I started doing things like spending time in the community, training people on the software that I built. And I remember teaching people about how to use Windows, how to use Office, through a church, for example. And it really opened my eyes about the complexity of the software that I natively understood because I built it, versus how people who weren't in the company perceive them. So these are some things that you would use to help you increase the validity, increase the fidelity, increase the confidence of your experiment building. So my last point is to say, it doesn't really matter why you're doing experimentation, right? If you're doing growth, it's high velocity. Uncertainty comes earlier. If you're doing core product work or innovation, maybe that's later, and maybe you're using concept testing and you're doing smaller changes, because it's not about the friction. Doing good customer discovery is necessary to craft the right experiment. And those 6 things I talked about will help you and will save you time. Every experiment pushes down the time to market. So every wrong experiment pushes time to market even sooner because you have to do the next one to get it right. So I'm encouraging you, based on a lot of experience, that the solution to crafting the right thing and getting to market faster is to talk to customers before you design these experiments. So, here's the sequence that I recommend. This is really the payoff of what I'm talking about, which is spend time discovery, right? Get into the mind of your customer, right? And then experiment, and then build. A lot of teams do only the last 2, but I guarantee you that if you can do these 3, you'll be a better product manager, and you'll be able to do better experiments, and you'll be able to build a better team. All right, this is my time. Follow me on Twitter if you can, because I do a lot of talking about product and product management. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I'll be around to do Q&A after this. And if anything didn't make sense or anything like that, I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you, OG, if you want to turn on the microphone on the video.
Happy to do that.
Hello. I'm just checking. I just want to check. Anyone had any issue to post question or not? Because there's been some posts on the WhatsApp organizer group with issue with posting questions. So can you try, or you can use the forum? But OG, I have one question for you. So what would you say to a team who wants to start really that customer discovery? What will be the best approach? Like, it's not something they're doing at the moment, and it's something they want to get more, start doing, or?
Honestly, starting is simple. If you already have customers, they're somewhere in the database, right? They're in your user database. If you have analytics, something like Amplitude or Heap that tracks what customers do, try to say, okay, what do I want to know? Which customers would be able to tell me have this need? And then try to use the analytics to find the accounts that match some kind of search criteria for those customers. And then, send them an email and say you want to have a chat with them for 20 minutes. It turns out that most of your customers want to help you build a better product because they're making an investment. And their ability to influence that investment positively is something they're interested in. So you are going to get a response from them. And frankly, just have a conversation. The PMs that worked for me would randomly reach out to customers when they didn't have any burning questions. They would randomly talk to customers every week. When they had burning questions, then they would select customers more carefully and not be random, and they would have more prepared questions. So start by looking at your database, your user database, and talking to people. And it can be general, and it can be very, very specific because you're very curious about something, you're about to devise some experiment, or you're about to build something. So that's how you start. Now, if you don't have customers, think of customers that you do want, find them on LinkedIn, reach out to them and try and talk to them. Most people will speak to you for 20 minutes if you say you want their expertise. So just do it.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of questions that came in, so I'm looking at the most voted one. So from Kira Gardner. So how do you convince people to invest the time in high quality discovery and then experimentation? That tension you described between time to market and confidence. Great session. Thank you. By the way.
How do you convince people? Well, I think it's about waste. Like I said, experimentation is dealing with uncertainty. There's all kinds of uncertainty. with building products. And customer discovery deals with the uncertainty in experimentation. That's how to think about it. Because devising the wrong experiment and having to repeat it because you got it wrong the first time will increase or decrease increase your time to market, which is undesirable. So in many ways, customer discovery helps you be even more precise. It lets you know the right experiment because you're already weeding out or starting from an understanding of your customers. So ultimately, the reason to do customer discovery first is that it will give you the most, I don't know, the minimum time to market when you have to do some experimentation. You know, if I'm a PM and I have to actually justify these things, I just get it done. I just do it. Do the experimentation, do the customer discovery, do the right experiments. And over time, what we will find is that you will get better results than other people in your company, and then use that as evidence to convince people that this is the right thing to do. So ask for forgiveness, just do it. Okay. Ask for forgiveness later, just get it done.
Okay. Another one for you. How do you balance designing for one customer and many customers? That's from Neve. How do you avoid customer over influencing your backlog?
That's a really big question. I think lots of PMs, actually early stage, deal with this. I think the only way, frankly, is to you have to set some principles for your product team. In the product teams that I run, I always say we never do anything that only one customer wants, right? We have this principle of broad-based value. We just don't do it. If one person wants it, we ignore it. In fact, what a startup should do is wait until there's a lot of pressure on something, like there's a clamor from your customers, because you don't have time to be doing onesie twosies. In fact, if you're an early stage company, if less than 50% of your existing customers adopt a feature, you've probably wasted your time, right? You want to build something that has broad-based value. So if one customer asks, just don't do it. You're not an order-taking company. You are finding a repeatable business model, which means that you build things that more and more of your customers adopt robustly. The metrics you should be thinking about is usage intensity and adoption, overall adoption. And you should just build principles into your product innovation that embrace those things. And, you know, customers are actually, if you're clear with them on why you're saying no or why you're saying this will come later, I think they'll hear you out.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 minutes left, so another question. Anyway, if we don't answer all the questions, then OG can reply to the questions after the talk. So next one.
Maybe some of the questions online. Go ahead.
Yeah. Next one from Francisco. What will be your advice to a team that is a bit stuck doing customer discovery and constantly proposing changes to things that we aren't built yet and deliver to live product? So yeah, making change without having delivered.
Let me see. Is that on the Q&A?
Yeah. It's Francisco.
Right. And so that sounds very disturbing. The point of customer discovery is, you don't just do customer discovery, you have to synthesize. So if you do customer discovery correctly, if you do user research correctly, you have to pause and say, what does this all mean? And then synthesize it. And that's an important step. Synthesize what you've learned and discuss it with a group of people to see if there's internal logic to it. Usually there's internal logic to it. There might be someone in your company who experiences the same thing. If you've talked to enough people, there should be some kind of consensus. I actually go through 3 steps. I talk to customers, a few customers, and then more generally, and then I learn enough to ask more pointer questions for the next 5, 10 customers. And then I send a survey, which turns all my qualitative conversations into hard data, right? And if you summarize that progression, you should have something that feels like insight, right? And that's what you do. Sorry?
It's over. it's been cut. So you can reach out to Francisco and directly
Okay.
to continue the discussion.
I'll try and respond.
Thank you, OG. Was very interesting.
Thank you.